Pilot Grant and Scholar Corps, our Scholar Corps info session today. First, I'm going to start just by introducing myself and my co-principal investigators. I'm Lisa Proce from the University of Michigan. Also here today is Eve Wittenberg from the Harvard Chan School of Public Health, Janelle Hammer from University of Pittsburgh, and we'll all be joining together to answer your questions. I'm following a brief presentation. I'd also like to introduce Angela Rose, who's the project manager for this network. And so she will also be a vital source for answering questions along the way as they come up. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. We have a very brief presentation, maybe 10 or 15 minutes. And then the main goal today is just to open it up for questions and answers from all of you on the pilot grants and Scholar Score application process. Okay, is everybody able to see my screen? Yep, okay, terrific. Yep. Great, so jumping right in, just starting with an overview of the network. Our overall goal is to support and advance research on the measurement of family well-being and pediatric quality of life by funding new areas of study, supporting and mentoring the next generation of scholars, and providing education and resources for researchers along the way. So this network is funded through a U24 mechanism, which is a cooperative agreement with the NICHD, as well as NCCIH, as well as the NIH Office of the Director. We have here joining us today for the Q&A session, Erin Quinlan, who's our scientific officer from NCCIH. Tracy King is our program officer from NICHD, not here today. I'm going to stop sharing just for a moment to see if Erin is here, if she just wants to wave and say hello. Erin, I see that you joined us.
Hi, yes, I was having problems with the app. I had to, was wanting me to update it. So let me see if I can start my video. So yeah, wonderful. So I wasn't, hi. So actually I can only join for the first like 30 minutes, then I have another meeting. But I'm always, open for people to email me with questions if I'm not able to be here for the Q&A session, but happy to be contacted anytime.
Terrific. Thanks so much. And thanks so much for joining today. And I had the same challenges getting in. It's like the ongoing challenges of working in this remote environment. So really glad you could be here.
Happy to be here. Thanks.
Thanks. Okay, I'm going to go back and reshare my screen. Okay, great. So this is a collaborative network. And as I mentioned, it's a cooperative agreement between the NIH, the University of Michigan, Harvard University, and the University of Pittsburgh. And it's also part of a larger network of 6 emotional well-being networks that are being funded through this funding mechanism from the NIH. And we won't talk too much about the other networks today, but do keep in mind that those are a source of collaboration and learning that can be accessed as part of these pilot grants, and especially the Research Scholar Corps as we move forward. Again, we're right at the beginning of this network building, and we'll be building onto those activities over the next few years. Okay, so again, kind of turning back to our specific focus here. So we're really focused on considering well-being and family well-being. When we think about emotional well-being, this can include life satisfaction, life purpose, positive emotions. All of these have been key public health targets. And although health can influence well-being, only recently has there been increasing attention on how overall well-being can influence health outcomes. And so there is much to learn just in that relationship itself. But beyond that, there is the larger context of the family setting. And the interdependence of health and well-being within and among family members has not been well characterized. So that is really the focus of all of the activities of this network is to contribute to the knowledge and advance the science around understanding family well-being. And as part of that, we also have a particular focus on understanding and contributing to the field of measuring pediatric quality of life. I would like to just comment that when we talk about family well-being, we're really interested in thinking about how this might change across the lifespan, so including individuals of all ages from early childhood to the end of our lives. And we don't want to put out too many examples today, although we're happy to entertain questions, but we're not going to, we debated about whether including specific examples of the type of research, but we don't want to put any limits because we do think that the opportunities for contributing to the science are very broad. So overall, our goal is really just to catalyze research and to provide resources and create connections. And just to note that we will be entertaining a very broad range of possible topics for both the pilot grants as well as the Research Scholar Corps projects. So the three components of the network include developing research resources, which includes a web-based repository, which is underway at the moment and will be up on a website as it evolves, and will include a focus on family instruments that have been developed to either measure or describe family well-being. Research funding that we'll be talking about today in terms of pilot grants, and research mentorship in terms of really trying to build a field around the measurement of family well-being through the Research Scholar Corps and creating networks across those scholars and their mentors, as well as across institutions. Okay, so in this next section, I'm just going to dive into some of the details of the funding for the research pilot grants. So the objective for these grants is very broad: to develop and advance new ideas and scalable approaches to contribute to the measurement and foundational knowledge of family well-being. And again, we're looking at a lifespan perspective. And again, the focus here is very broad. These projects could be qualitative or quantitative, could include primary or secondary data, could include literature reviews. They might be conceptual, methodological, or applications focused. We think any of those could really make important contributions to advancing the field of knowledge here. And transdisciplinary work is not required, but it's certainly encouraged because we think that that is likely to be necessary for many of the topics that will be considered within these pilot grants. In terms of what are some of both the expectations as well as the resources that will be available, grantees will be expected to participate in our network symposia, workshops, and webinars, which will happen throughout the year. We'll also be planning some what we're calling network adjacent conferences that will happen kind of alongside some of the major conferences that will be addressing topics in this area. They'll have access to support for research translation and dissemination, and will receive feedback on external funding opportunities, as well as feedback on their ongoing pilot work through our network meetings. Priorities for the pilot grants include contributing to the family impacts and themes, advancing methods, developing investigators, and in particular, contributing to the network. Again, I'm considering that we are creating a network around the science of measuring family well-being, but this is also in the context of the larger network of networks, and that will be important as well. And now just moving to the nuts and bolts of the application process. So rolling applications open essentially now. So today will be the formal kickoff for the application process. Awards can be for up to $10,000 with a 12-month duration, with 6-month no-cost extensions possible as needed. What will be required for the application is a project description that's up to 2 pages. It's a statement of the project's overall objectives. It should include a description of the research plan and the methodologies to be employed, as well as a description of the anticipated impact on the science of family well-being measurement or child quality of life. There is a very brief budget and budget justification that will be required, $10,000 or less indirect costs. This grant mechanism will not provide indirect costs on top of that, and just in a one-page format describing expense categories and budgeted amounts. There will also be a bio sketch that will need to be submitted for each investigator. So for the PI and any co-investigators, and this can be the NIH bio sketch or an equivalent. The scoring criteria are listed here on this slide: impact, theme, investigator, methods, and pilot. So the first will evaluate the significance of the topic and the potential to advance the science of family well-being measurement. The theme will assess the degree to which the topic of the proposal addresses a topic relevant to research gaps. So explaining, how this is advancing the field, what is the research gap that's being filled. And here it says family well-being. I want to note here again that we do have a dual focus on pediatric quality of life, because we do know that there are many gaps in that field that will directly relate to the measurement of family well-being. And so keep that in mind. We do have this dual focus in both the pilot grants and the research scholar core. Investigators, again, the qualifications of the investigators in terms of, again, I would say not so much in terms of their previous work directly in this field, because we understand that there will likely be investigators coming to this field from related fields, and that's what we will be encouraging in these grant applications. The next criterion will evaluate progress and methodological rigor of the scientific plan, and the likelihood that the pilot will lead to a larger project in the field, so that it really is a pilot. And this is not necessarily, the requirement here is nothing like we expect that this will lead to an R01, but that it will lead to further work and to be able to explain what that further work would be. So next I'll move on to just a few slides describing the application process for the Research Scholar Corps. So here the overall goal is to support and foster a scholar pipeline for future research on family well-being measurement. So this is intended for trainees and junior faculty, and trainees we're defining broadly could be graduate students of any type, postdoctoral fellows, residents. If you have any questions about this, feel free to just send us an email. The goal is to provide multidisciplinary mentoring and training to those that are interested in developing their research in the area of family well-being or pediatric quality of life. Part of the goal of the Research Scholar Corps, again, is to create this peer network so that we can really start to create this field of investigators that can work together in the coming years to advance the field here. And again, there's an opportunity to provide additional networking and to highlight your research, through our website, as well as through the inclusion and annual symposia. The structure, this will be set up as a year-long program. The Scholar Mentor Match can be facilitated by FAMNet, or you can apply as a matched pair. So just to state that another way, so that if you are a prospective scholar, you can apply as an individual, and we can work to identify a suitable mentor for you from within the network. Or if you already have an identified mentor, you can apply as a pair, a scholar mentor pair, directly to the program. The Scholar Corps program will provide up to $4,000 for research activities, including data collection or other data costs, research supplies, publication costs, and travel. Once we all start traveling again, travel is starting to start up a little bit now. And again, if there are other research activities that you don't see on this list that would be required for the type of research that you're doing, please just send us an email, and we're happy to answer questions on that. Again, applications will open as of today. We expect to support 12 scholars over the 4 years of the network, again, intended for junior faculty and trainees and their mentors. And applicants can submit for pilot funding in the same cycle or later cycle. So there's no requirement that you can only apply for one or the other. You can definitely apply for both. That's a question we've already received. For the Scholar Corps application process, a statement of interest is required. Will be up to 2 pages in length. We're trying to keep the burden low for both of these. That this statement of interest should include a statement of the project's overall objectives, description of the research plan and methodologies to be employed, and again, a description of the anticipated impact on the science of family well-being measurement or pediatric quality of life. There should also be in the statement of interest a brief description of the mentorship plan. So if you're at the same institution, how often you'll meet. If you're not at the same institution, how that relationship will be working. For the Scholar Corps application, we are also including the submission of a recorded elevator pitch. So this is a brief audio self-introduction and a summary of your research in 1 minute or less in non-academic language, essentially summarizing your application. Again, here biosketches are required for yourself as well as for your mentor if you're applying as a pair. If you are a letter of recommendation is required, again, either from your proposed mentor or from an existing advisor or mentor if you're applying to get matched within the program. And the final section, a mentor description, would be just a very brief description of what you are looking for in a mentor. The Scholar Corps scoring criteria are shown on this slide. Again, very similar to what we have just seen with the pilot program scoring criteria. The only difference here is that we'll be evaluating both the qualifications of the scholar and the mentor if there's a mentor included in the application. Otherwise, just evaluating the scholar background. So this slide shows our timeline. So as I mentioned, applications will be opening this week. While we show these kind of as deadlines, again, these are rolling application periods. So anyone can apply at any time during these dates. But if your application comes in on or before January 31st, for example, we'll be reviewing those applications during the week of February 7th. We're committed to a really rapid review and turnaround process and plan to notify awardees by the week of February 14th. And you can see the other upcoming dates for 2022 listed on this slide. In terms of grantee requirements, you can see those at the bottom. Again, we're trying to keep the burden low here. There will be an interim report due, which will be a Zoom retreat for all grantees to present their progress to our FAMNet executive committee as well as to other grantees. And there will be a structured project summary and end of project report that includes a recorded video presentation. And this is something that will be eventually posted on our website. And again, I think will serve to further collaborations among the field. Okay. So this slide shows here the link to the submission website. Also lists our email if you have questions. I am going to stop sharing at this point. I'm going to turn it over to Eve Wittenberg and Janelle Hammer for the Q&A section.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. Thank you all for coming. I think we've been in touch with a few of you, sort of one-on-one with some questions already, but this is our official launch. So if you have specific questions, feel free to raise them now. You can whatever the visual equivalent of unmute is, or you can just go ahead and speak. This is a really small group. So we want to make this pretty informal, and we will answer everything we can now and also be available by email following this session to answer everything else. And what we will do is we will compile questions so that we continually expand our frequently asked question sort of bank to make sure everyone has the same information. But at this point, we're just starting out. It's a pretty small group, so we'd love to just chat about it. You can even throw out ideas. I hesitated before I said that, but let's use this as a bit of a working session and answer questions and try and get things going. So does anybody, oh, Christina, hi, it's so good to see you. Go ahead, you can just unmute yourself. Everybody can just unmute and speak, right, Angela? Or do we have to unmute?
Everyone should be
Okay.
able to unmute.
Okay, Christina, nice to see you. Christina's from Harvard, and I'm thrilled you're here. Go ahead.
Thank you, Eve, and thank you, Lisa, as well. I'm really excited to hear about the FAMNet program. As a researcher here at Harvard, I've begun to start on a book project, and I was wondering whether or not a book project would be eligible to receive grant funding for a pilot grant program, because I know technically it is a multi-year project. And it's focused on looking at the role of family structure in shaping children's well-being during the transition to adulthood. And so substantively, I think that there could be a good match, but I was just wondering about whether the scope of the project would render it eligible or not.
Good question. I'm not just saying that to sort of save time, because you say that right after every single question. Christina, you should have given me that ahead of time so that I could prepare myself.
Oh no, Eve, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. Sorry.
But I knew that, and I thought as you said it, of course, because you already told me about the book. Lisa, Janelle, do you have thoughts on this?
I do, yeah. So I was going to jump and say, absolutely. I think, as I mentioned, we're very open to all different types of scholarship here. And I think that, but it will be important to be able to kind of characterize what part of it is a pilot. So if there is some portion of your book that could be considered under the pilot project, if that makes sense, that there's some initial research that would fall under the category, that would be funded by this mechanism.
That makes sense.
The other thing I would throw out is, and we can certainly talk about this afterwards, because obviously, we're caught flat-footed on this question. It's a good start. But I was also thinking, this might be a scholar, if you wanted to bring in someone to perhaps, sort of give input or guidance, or I don't know, something of that sort of mentorship through the book writing process, because I'm pretty sure this is your first book. That might also be a mechanism that I was thinking of. So I think in principle, the answer is yes. I think the challenge will be to carve out a piece that fits well within this. Erin, were you going to say something in response to that? Because I see you there in the queue.
No, Eva, I was actually just gonna, I had another question / suggestion, okay. So I'll hold it.
Okay, all right. So how's that for a response, Christina? It's not no.
Yes, it sounds like it's about just making the case that whatever portion of the book that would be funded during the 12-month period would be a portion that's at an earlier stage and would fit within the broader goals of FAMNet. Or it sounded like you're suggesting that the mentorship program could be an even better fit. Because you're right, this is my first book, and I'm looking for any and all support. And so part of it is about getting critical feedback. The other part is research assistance. So I guess I have to think more about it and see whether I should apply to one or both.
Yeah, I think that's the answer. And I'm happy to talk with you more to sort of develop this and investigate it more. But I would throw out that both might be potentials.
Okay. Thank you.
But I'm thrilled you're writing a book. Amanda, I believe, was next in line.
Hi, my name is Amanda Costa. I'm a PEDS hospitalist, first-year fellow at the University of Michigan. I work at CS Mott Children's Hospital. I am involved in a research study with the palliative care team with neurological development delayed kids, and I would like to know, I know the grant helps and looks into like the long term if the palliative patients would qualify to be included on the study, like for the grant.
Lisa, that's straight in your bucket.
Yeah, let me jump right in. So absolutely, I think that, there are, many questions around end of life care that relate to family well-being. And so those questions would be very well suited to this mechanism.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, Erin.
Yeah, thanks, Eve. So I wanted to actually, if you said this, I apologize if I missed it. For the research pilot grants, will you be encouraging or requesting or allowing letters of intent for the applications? Just because I know another network didn't do that the first round and found that when they kind of reissued a more specific RFA for the pilot grants, they found that letters of intent helped them sort of guide more appropriately if people didn't quite, weren't quite hitting the goals of the RFA. They could kind of weed that out through letters of intent before getting the full application. So I just wanted to ask and maybe also suggest that if that wasn't already part of the plan.
That's a really good idea. We had not incorporated that, I think in part, well, for a number of reasons, but I hear exactly what you're saying. And I think we can think about that and see whether or not there's a way to weave it in. Some of the questions, because it's just starting, some people have contacted us to sort of toss around ideas, and I'm hoping that will serve in a really informal way. But I think we might want to formalize that and help people shape good ideas in order to help them be most successful in this, rather than provide that. Rather than finding out that afterwards. So really good idea. Thanks, Erin. We will talk among ourselves and try and figure out how to.
Sure, it's certainly not it's really not a requirement from our perspective, but just learning from what other networks have experienced. So just thought I'd mention that. Thank you, Eve.
Really good idea. Thank you.
And I have to jump off, but I just want to say thank you for letting me join. And again, if anyone on this call has questions, Tracy's not on the call, but either about NIH. Please reach out. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Erin. Thanks for coming. I think Laura was next and then Hadley. I have to admit, people are not at the right place in the screen the way they're supposed to be.
Hi,
But
my name is Laura Dietz, and I'm at the University of Pittsburgh. Thank you so much for the information about the project. So excited to receive the announcement about the FAMNet research network. I have a question for the pilot projects. Would those projects have to be completely new, or could we propose kind of an addendum to an ongoing project? Would that be within the scope of what you're looking for a pilot project? So I have a small pilot grant to work with older kinship caregivers in rural areas of Pennsylvania that have been hard hit by the opioid epidemic. So learning about the challenges that they face in terms of caring for dependent children, but also looking at their mental and physical health indicators. So that's a small pilot grant, but we've been doing so much work in just getting to know and building relationships with the community. Would pilot projects for FAMNet would that be considered within the scope, or would it have to be something completely new?
I'm just going to go ahead and answer because I think I know that we would all, I'm pretty sure we would all agree on this. Yes, to the part of can it be an extension of an existing grant? It completely fine. The only thing to consider is making sure that it fits within this, this sort of envelope of measuring well-being. So in other words, framing the part that's an extension of what you're doing right now to be within that area, to meet the criteria of what our goals and objectives are. But as far as it being sort of a wholly new thing versus an extension of something that's there, either one's completely fine. In fact, using an existing project and sort of leveraging what you're doing and extending it with this opportunity, I think is a great idea. But I'll let Lisa and Janelle add anything or contradict me if you like.
No, I think an absolutely new extension of an existing project is fantastic.
Same here. I agree.
Thank you so
Okay,
much.
predictably.
I need to run off as well, but thank you so much for your time.
Okay, thank you. Hadley, hi.
Hi, all. Thank you so much for this presentation and for the opportunity to ask questions. So I'm interested in learning a little bit more about kind of mentor-mentee pairings for the Scholar Corps, and really just wanted to take this time to ask your, I think, more opinion than maybe a right or wrong thing to do here. But if we are applying as a scholar with an anticipated move in institution over the next year, possibly, how would you advise approaching identifying an existing mentor versus kind of leaving that up to the network to determine? So in particular, I'm thinking about, is this an opportunity where I should kind of identify experts working in this area who I'm already connected with in some way, or should I take applying to the Scholar Corps as an opportunity to be matched up with someone new that could kind of branch out my existing mentor network a little bit? So maybe if you could say a little bit more about who you are thinking about drawing from the mentor pool, that might be helpful as I decide which way to go on this. And any other advice, appreciate it as well.
Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and then I'll let Lisa and Janelle add in. First off, offline, you'll have to tell me about your future plans because you dropped a giant hint there and it's very intriguing. But
well, I'm on the job market formally, so.
Okay. I didn't know that. I lost track of that somewhere along the way. So from who we are pulling, so we have our quote unquote network within FAMNet. So we have a bunch of people who are our co-investigators and who are sort of at this point more loosely connected with FAMNet because they haven't started playing official roles. And they are the people from whom we would be thinking about choosing in order to match mentors. It's my opinion, and Lisa and Janelle might feel differently, that the opportunity here would be to expand your existing network, but that's not a requirement in any way. So I think really the goal is, as you know, finding those relationships that are really the incredible mentoring relationships, which are just really few and far between. And if you have someone you're working with, it doesn't matter to us what institution they're in, and that you're moving, we would expect, and our goal is that at the end of some period of time, there will be this network of people across the country who are doing work in this area who we can sort of connect and we'll move this whole field forward. So they don't have to be where you are. We also have this bigger network of networks. I know we keep referring to this, but there are 5 other networks who are all doing emotional well-being work, some of which is more closely related to us than others. But we have that group to sort of pull from and recruit from as well for mentoring. So I think it's the opportunity of who could really give you the most benefit for a year's worth of work, who we can facilitate that relationship through our little seed grant money and basically kind of set you up, match make it, whether it be somebody you're with or somebody new, and push you forward one step on the road. Other things to add, Lisa or Janelle?
I think that's right. I mean, I think that we're happy to support anything that sounds like it's going to move the field forward. I would say that you would need to give a compelling argument why an existing mentoring relationship needs more support, for, you know, sort of why, you know, if it's, I want to learn about this area of thing or this technique or whatever, sort of, you just sort of have to say, I haven't had the opportunity to work on this kind of technique with this mentor before, and that's what I wanted, as opposed to why it wasn't already established.
Anything else, Lisa? Okay. Hadley, does
That's all
that help?
helpful. Yes, that's very helpful. Thank you.
I also, speak for myself, I'm more than willing to bounce ideas around with you, and sort of talk about this in more depth if it's useful. And that's true for everybody on the call. I'm perfectly happy to chat individually and sort of do the verbal equivalent of like a letter of intent to help crystallize ideas, because we want to fund people. So yes, this is competitive in that we don't have an infinite amount of money, but it's really, the idea is we want to get people to the place where you have a really good idea and it fits within what our mission is in terms of our funding source. And then we want to give you money, and then we want to make sure that that you do good work with the money. So it's like, it's a very supported grant making process, more, even though there is an inherently competitive element to it. So we can talk more if it would be helpful. Hi, Jody.
Hello. My question is with regards to whether it's a project proposal for the scholars or for the pilot, if the network would be able to provide support for kind of recruitment from other institutions, or if we, for our proposal, need to have our own recruitment plan for other sites.
Okay, I have to admit, you lost me on that.
So I guess my thoughts are, for example, if we're thinking about, data collection for a survey or whatever it is that we're proposing, would the network be able to help serve as like another site to help recruit potential participants? Or is that not a service that the network could provide?
Help?
I'm going to say that's a great question, Jody. So I think in theory, we hope we'll be able to do that. I think, at this moment in time, we're just growing our distribution list, but certainly I think depending on exactly the nature of the survey and the types of participants, I think we could certainly help with, as we said, we'll help with research dissemination and translation. We could certainly help with dissemination of your requests to other researchers in the network. If that would be helpful, will we have our own participants to be able to provide access to, I don't think we see that as part of, what will be a network resource.
Yeah, so I mean, I think my struggle was trying to figure out like what this in practice, like what you really mean in practice, and whether or not we have that. I think if it's something we have, absolutely, we're willing to help with it. I think the one other thing we have, like I keep saying, this network of networks, there are these 5 other networks that are scattered across the country that are really focused on emotional well-being. There is no other network that's specifically focused on families or specifically on children. So to the extent that the other networks focus on measuring emotional well-being, of which probably maybe 2 or 3 of the other ones are focused on, that's a potential resource. I mean, it's always contingent on ability to help out in this way. But I think in principle, we would want to help. I think in practice, I'm not sure if we can. I mean, simply, I'm not sure we have what you need. But I'm certainly willing to entertain ideas and requests. Janelle might have better resources.
Yeah, and I think it depends on the type of subjects you're looking for and what, I think it's going to be very project specific, what network resources and dissemination would be helpful. If it's a matter of, distributing advertisements, that's probably way easier than it is to, get biological samples or whatever, right? Like it's just it's a huge range. And so I think what I hear from us is that we're not saying no. And, it's hard to be fully descriptive of everything we could possibly do. And so it's probably better to talk to us one-on-one about what your specific idea is, and if we think there's a way that we could help make that happen.
Great, thanks so much.
Okay. Any other questions? I'm just checking the chat. No. Okay. I'm checking the time. Okay, questions or comments? We're here if you have questions. As I think we said, we're always open to talking through ideas or answering specifics. We have an official email address, contact@famnet.org with a hyphen. But I think I'm perfectly willing also to share my not my personal, but like my individual email address. And I can't figure out how to do it, but Angela can do it, I'm sure. And answer any sort of questions. Thank you, Janelle. I couldn't figure out how to do to all. Oh my goodness. Just typing in my email address. Yes, there we go. Oh, I'm sending it to Janelle. In any case, so I'm not super technical here, but there we go. Lacking any other questions, I think we will conclude this session. Wait a minute, Hadley has a question.
Okay, sorry.
But no, it's fine. And I was just going to say, anyone, feel free to leave when you want. There's no there's no personal offense now. You don't need to stay here. It's not like a party. Just go ahead and walk out if you want, or hang around if you want. Hadley, yes.
Sorry, I'll take advantage of the time with you all. So I did have one more kind of technical question about the Scholars Corps funding. So if we are doing something that requires like a second reviewer on a systematic review or a second coder on qualitative work, is it possible to have kind of technical assistance? I know the budget is smaller for the Scholars Corps projects, but like, would it be allowable to have someone as kind of a team member or a buddy to be a second kind of secondary set of eyes on things if that's required for the methodology to be rigorous?
Without consulting with my colleagues, I'm going to go out on a limb and say anything that facilitates the project that you are working on, except buying an office chair or sort of, pretty much like basic NIH, you can't do that sort of stuff. Yes, that would be acceptable. What are my peers' agreements there? Okay, we're getting the yes, thumbs up. So yeah, Hadley, anything that lets you, I'm just going to get more enthusiastic about it. Anything that lets you do your project, within the normal constraints of, what the normal constraints are. But, yes, that would be research assistance, and that would be totally allowable.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Anyone else? Should we wrap? We've recorded this, so we will have this somewhere. We actually do have a YouTube channel, and so it will be available eventually. And we'll put it on some random websites at the start, but eventually we will have our FamNet website up and running, and so it will be there with answers to these questions. But we'll also expand our frequently asked questions list so that some of these things can be incorporated and people can refer back to them. But thank you so much for coming. Thank you for your interest, and we really hope to see your applications.